It's time for us to say a very good morning and thank you for your time, Mr. Michael Swain. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Always great to be on Breakfast with Friends.
Thank you so much. So Michael Swain heads up an organization called Freedom of Religion South Africa. And this morning we want to talk about the hate speech bill. So let's just give a little bit of context off the bat. It's been 5 years that the bill, 5 years ago that the bill was introduced. And the main purpose that was told to us was that the bill was to criminalize hate speech and hate crimes. Now, here on CCFM, we've spoken about it numerous times, especially with Michael Swain himself. But in terms of what happened yesterday, it has finally been passed in the National Assembly, despite fierce opposition from Freedom of Religion South Africa and other religious organizations, and of course, fierce debate as well in Parliament. And of course, there were major concerns that were raised with regard to this. Michael, just unpack it for us quickly, please.
Well, as I think you correctly have alluded to, this is probably the most controversial piece of legislation since the advent of South Africa's democratic dispensation, because it proposes to criminalize speech. And in simple language, the definition of what it calls hate speech in this bill is it's something that incites harm, promotes and propagates hatred against a group of listed people, and there's a list of them, and for which you can go to jail for up to 8 years. Now, one of the big problems with it, in fact, there are several big problems with it, is number one, how do you define things? Because obviously how you define things like harm and hatred very much will depend upon whether or not you potentially can go to jail for something that you say. And the definition of harm includes substantial emotional, psychological, physical, social, or economic harm. Now, think about that. Emotional harm, what does that actually mean? It's not defined in the bill, and it could literally involve hurt feelings. So in other words, if somebody hurts your feelings substantially, and that's the other problem, because it's not grievous or egregious or any other really sort of like emotive, it just says substantial. So if somebody really hurts your feelings, then potentially you could be sent to jail for up to 8 years. And literally, that would just be for something that you say. It also, by the way, doesn't require the state to prove that your words caused any actual harm. It's just that they could have possibly resulted in substantial, for example, emotional harm. And then when it comes to hatred, hatred also isn't defined. I think probably because it's very difficult to define. But it could literally mean that if you say or display or share anything that could potentially result in substantially hurt feelings that somehow promotes or propagates some undefined hatred against a group of people listed in the bill, among whom, of course, obviously, there are some of the more loose groupings like sex, sexual orientation, gender, so on and so forth, that could literally send you to jail. So from a religious freedom point of view, we're very concerned because although there is an exemption in it, an exemption clause in it, it basically is a circular argument. So it says something along the lines of, if you in good faith share a religious belief, you're not guilty of the crime of hate speech unless what you say advocates hatred and that constitutes incitement to cause harm against a group of people specifically listed in the bill. And of course, what that really means is it says something along the lines of you're not guilty of hate speech unless what you say is hate speech according to the bill. So it's very, very loose and open-ended. And obviously that's very concerning. Yeah, so that's about where we are with it. We've been obviously on this for years now. But it doesn't seem to be getting through the message to government that this is something which potentially could be weaponized and used against people of faith.
And that, again, is just something that I want to highlight is we're not saying that we are for hate speech, trying to say that. Definitely not. But in terms of our current laws and things that are in place, there are more than enough ways to deal with those things. So it's been passed in Parliament. What now? What's the next step?
So the next step is that it moves then on to the next House of Parliament. There are two Houses of Parliament. There's the National Assembly, and then there's the National Council of Provinces, known as the NCOP. And so now that it's been passed by the National Assembly, it will now move to the NCOP. And we sincerely hope, and we're pretty confident, that they will then open it up for another round of public comment. And as we've said so many times, when these opportunities for public comment arise, we must take them, because the more we raise our voices, the louder our voices become. And ultimately, government cannot simply go through against the will of the people. And if enough people say, we don't want this, or we want this particular exemption in, which we absolutely do for religious freedom, then we have the opportunity, even if it does get passed subsequently, which is when the president finally signs it. So there's another opportunity, even if it does go through the NCOP. But we could potentially then challenge it and take it under review. We believe it is unconstitutional. It is significantly broader than the constitutional definition, and it is significantly broader than the definition of hate speech in the Equality Act, or PAPUDA, which is, of course, a civil act. So it's actually easier to be sent to jail for something that you say, if this thing does go through, than it would be to say, for example, be fined or asked to make an apology, because the definition in the hate speech bill is that broad.
So we need to be aware of this. And how do people stay abreast with the developments as they go forward, Michael?
Well, I think particularly, please do go to the forsa.org.za website. You can sign up for our newsletter. We also have started a WhatsApp group. So we're sending out just a short weekly little video clip of what's happening, the latest things that are going on. And if there are obviously any emergencies or alerts, then we'll use that as well. So sign up and stay informed, because it really does not help us if we don't keep our eye on these things. And the next thing we wake up and the law's changed, and lo and behold, we're living in a world that we really are not going to be at all comfortable or happy living in.
Yeah, so true. What's the WhatsApp number that people should use if they want to be part of that WhatsApp group?
I don't, unfortunately, have it offhand. We are actually inventing it even as we speak. So in the meantime, sign up for our newsletter, because then we'll send you something, and then you can subscribe specifically to the WhatsApp group.
Makes a lot of sense. Michael Swain, Executive Director for Freedom of Religion South Africa, thank you so much for chatting to us this morning. And we're definitely going to keep our finger on this one. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan.